Hello, everyone. It's 1 o'clock in the Central Time Zone, and I'm happy for you to be able to join us here today. This is the first in a series of webinars in which we will be showcasing our strategic partners, our Johnson Consulting Group strategic partners. We've put together a group of strategic partners for the sole purpose of expanding our own capacity to serve and help our clients. First, the wisest thing anybody knows is their limitations. And we realize, of course, there's areas that we do not have the expertise like the gentleman that we have today, and that's Alex McCracken from Funeral Innovations. Very happy to have you, Alex. We've been working with you and with clients for a number of years, and always a satisfied return when you do your free reviews of online. We can talk about that later, but with no further ado, let me turn it over to you, Alex.
Thank you, Nelson. Can everyone hear me all right?
I can.
All right. Well, we got one, and that's what matters. So, hey, I'm Alex McCracken. I'm the VP of Sales here at Funeral Innovations. Some of you may have heard of us before. Some of you may have not. We've been around for about 15 years in the profession, and we've been working with Johnson Consulting for a number of years, and we appreciate you having us on. And without further ado, I'd love to hop in to talk about some of the trends we're seeing with technology, current and future technology, and some of the problems that a lot of funeral homes are having with this in terms of understanding that technology and understanding how it works for their community. So I want to start off today by talking about a little story that I'm sure some of you have heard about. GameStop, right? As you probably all know, GameStop was this, what they call a meme stock, right? That was made very popular on a subreddit called Wall Street Bets. And here's the thing, my personal story on this is I actually heard about GameStop on January 22nd. So we're talking about right in this area, okay? And when I heard about this, I was like, wow, there's this new movement of this stock that everyone thinks is going to explode. And I was like, okay, well, this sounds like something I might be interested in. And what did I do? I dragged my feet. I said, you know what? I'm not really sure if I want to get in on that. It seems kind of, like it's actually not going to pay out for me. And I don't know if I actually believe all these people. Well, of course, when I invested or was thinking about invested, it was at $65 per share. If I would have said yes at that point, invested in this, I could have gone up to $347 a share. I could have 5x'd my investment. But what did I do instead? I went skiing and didn't even think about it and came back on the 27th and saw it at $347 per share and cried myself to sleep that night.
And that's why you're doing a webinar on a Thursday afternoon, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, I haven't worked since that day because I've been in misery, but now I'm back. And another instance of this is Bitcoin. I can't tell you how many times I've been burned in my life from not acting on these decisions. But, back in 2017, I started hearing about Bitcoin, and it shot up in 2018. I could have invested then, went back down for a couple of years, was at this low point. Well, now, just this morning, it was at $47,000 and $47,500 per Bitcoin. Another chance of me being a millionaire, another chance for y'all to not have to listen to me on this webinar, but yet we're here. So the reason I bring up these stories is that this is an example of some type of trend or technology that came about, and I saw opportunities and I sat on them and didn't take advantage of them. But the thing about these is these two examples I just brought up here, GameStop and Bitcoin or any of these, they're really volatile, right? They're extremely ups and downs, and it's a pretty risky investment. But the great part about what technologies we adopt in the funeral profession is they're a lot more calm. They're less volatile. We see them coming for a number of years. And that's really helpful because we want to find the things that have really leveled out and are not as volatile, the things that are a lot more predictable, and use that as a means for us to determine what technology can help the funeral home as well as the community and adopting. So we all know with this pandemic that so many things have changed, right? A lot of new technology, well, seemingly new technology was adopted, right? So the ship was so fast in this consumer behavior to things like shopping and ordering things online, a lot more home delivery, doing Zoom meetings, doing more FaceTime, doing different ways for people to connect using technology. But the really amazing thing is that a lot of this technology that we're using now, it's not like it was just new as of March of 2020. This stuff has been around for years and years. I mean, the first iPhone, that came back out or came out in probably 2007, 2006, around in that point. FaceTime, I think, came out in 2010. So these things have been around for a long time, but it wasn't as well adopted. And what we saw with the pandemic is that these technologies were adopted a lot faster than we were expecting. And it really had a pretty profound impacts on a lot of funeral homes that weren't paying attention to that technology. So once everybody, all their consumers and community adopted it, they weren't ready, and they had to deal with training staff, buying new equipment to do live streaming, having to upgrade their internet because they were having bandwidth issues. They were busy searching for software or other solutions that helped them. They had to update their messaging.
Alex, we just lost your audio. Still not there. Alex, if you can hear me, we can't hear you. Still no sound on our end.
Okay.
Now we got you.
Okay. All right. So what we're seeing is a lot of frustrated families from the funeral homes trying to adopt things and being in a fast-paced environment. In fact, Johnson Consulting had a recent report that came out that showed that one of the biggest impacts was a decrease in customer satisfaction. And that's not necessarily a product of the funeral home and not being ready. There's also just, frustration when you want to go have an in-person funeral and you can't do that anymore. But there's a lot of things that if the funeral home would have been better prepared for these technologies coming down the pipe, they would have definitely been able to better serve their families. So what we want to do is we want to talk today about how to be prepared for those new things that are coming, right? So how to look at those technology trends and determine what you need to focus on, as well as what might have an impact on your business. And it's not just new technology, it's technology that is that you're already using as well. So when we look at how to be prepared, there are some natural progressions of technology that we can look at. Some of you may have seen.
This is called the technology adoption curve.
Hey, Alex, your audio just went, it's there, but it's broken.
Okay. Is it still broken here?
Yep.
Okay.
Still cracky.
Speaking of technology, everyone write Apple, and you can talk to them about how their AirPods are supposed to work seamlessly with the MacBook, but sometimes don't. So this is the technology adoption curve, okay? And on this technology adoption curve, the way this works is any new technology that comes out follows this natural progression of adoption within an economy. So at the very far left here, we have our tech enthusiasts, the innovators, the people who find a new technology like Bitcoin or GameStop or, find some other drone technology or whatever, and they adopt it very quickly. And they have a vision of how it can work within, a business or a company, and they adopt it very early. And then what comes next is this chasm. And this chasm is what happens when technology is not adopted. It doesn't find a good spot within a economy or a community and doesn't get adopted. So a common example I bring up on this are Laserdisc. For those of you old enough to remember Laserdisc, they were between VHS and before DVDs. And everyone came out and said, hey, discs are the next thing. There were these huge discs about this big. I remember watching Terminator on one, and it was an amazing experience. But the thing is, it never crossed the chasm. So the early adopters used it, but the early majority never got to it. So here's the thing is, as in the funeral profession and almost in a lot of businesses, you don't have to pay attention a lot to the technology that hasn't crossed the chasm. But when you start seeing early majority of people, the pragmatists, adopting that technology, that's when you want to start taking notice. And it doesn't have to necessarily be with your community. It can also just be in the overall country, right? What's happening across the US. And then there's things like the late majority who start to adopt them later, might not feel as comfortable. And of course, at the very end of this, you have the skeptics and laggards. These are the last people to adopt it, right? So Nelson, I'm curious in your eyes, in thinking about something like video calls, where do you feel like video calls are along this adoption curve?
Well, if you had asked me a year ago at this time, it probably wouldn't even show up on the radar. But obviously now it's a big part of funeral directors' everyday life. But I would venture the fact that there's probably a few forays into frustration because they're not fully capable, or maybe not fully interactive. So they're getting there, but they're probably not all real high-end users, and I would include myself in that.
Yeah, I mean, something like video calls is I would say pre-2020, we were maybe in the early majority, late majority even. But after that, we probably hit the latter half of the late majority, maybe even into the laggards, right? But this is an interesting part about this, is that oftentimes when we have technology like this, your community might be adopting it, using it, but the funeral home might not be yet. And that's a problem. We don't always want the community to be that far ahead of adopting technology beyond what you are as a funeral home owner. So let's talk a little bit about some other things that we can do to look at this technology and understand it, right? So the first one is to understand your market. Everybody's intimately familiar with your market, your community, and how they respond to things. But here's the thing that I often see with this is you assume that the way that your technology adoption is the same for your entire community. I often hear from funeral homes that say they're in a rural area and they say, hey, I live in a rural conservative area and my people are just not on Facebook. They don't care about Facebook. And the thing is that what they're projecting that they don't like Facebook and they're not on Facebook and that's why they're not on it. Or they'll say, hey, people just don't want to have a direct cremation. They care about traditional funerals. They said that 15 years ago, and now what do they have? They have some direct cremation provider in their community because they took what their own likes and interests were and project those out to the community. So when you're trying to understand your community, don't try to leave your opinions aside and actually do things like run small samples, talk to more people in the community, run a survey, run a poll, actually put out feelers out there, right? And I'm not saying go and talk to like your 15-year-old kid about what they like, but talk to the people in the 40, 50, 60, 70-year-old age brackets and just see what new things they're doing, what new apps they've downloaded on their phone, or if they're using a smartphone, or just open those conversations with your community. But then you can also come back in and run small samples with that, right? There's a lot of ways to inexpensively test things in your community to see if people are accepting those or not. The other one is, evaluating costs, right? A lot of time when new technology comes out, it's pretty expensive. And as it gets adopted more, the costs go down. We're seeing this a lot with solar energy right now. Solar energy, the prices are just, falling, below the bottom almost with those. And it's real cheap and easy now to get that because it's been accepted so much. So that's another way to look at it, is the cost, right? I mean, obviously things can be cost prohibitive, but that helps you understand where the adoption is as well. The other one I would say is to actually talk to people who are coming out with this new technology, right? Talk to the salespeople. I know everyone gets inundated with people calling and trying to sell you Google services, seemingly from every country across the world. But some of the people who maybe you've heard about them before, listen to what they're telling you, ask them what new technology, ask them what's going on in other communities and what the trends are there. So let's talk a little bit more about how to evaluate your current technology, right? So when we look at the technology that's out there, there's a lot of new stuff, but there's a lot of stuff you're using today that you're probably not using correctly. And so let's open the book on that and actually dive into it and learn a little bit more about some of the things you're doing today to see if they are working. And what I really want to talk to you about is the why behind that. Not just as necessarily like, what is the technology you're using and is it being put to good use, but why is it important? We want to make sure that you're not just checking the box. And I hear that from a lot of funeral homes who say, well, you know, I started doing something like digital marketing because everybody told me, every conference I went to, they said, you need to be, you know, have a website. First off, it was, then you got to be on Facebook. And then they're like, oh, now Instagram. And everyone's coming at you different ways. But if you don't understand the why behind it, you're just checking a box. You need to understand how it can impact your business. So what are some of those current technologies we want to reevaluate? Well, let's look at a big one, right? Facebook. I can't tell you how many funeral homes I talk to that are doing Facebook and doing it incorrectly, right? So Facebook is not this place where you know, your sole mission is to just get a like on a Facebook post. Facebook is a place where you need to think about it as, I bring up this example a lot, is the pamphlets that you have in the front of your funeral home. So everyone knows these pamphlets where it's you know, you might have the pre-planning guide, you might have a grief pamphlet that people can get, you might have one for estate planning or wills or a variety of information that people get. Well, those pamphlets right now, in order for somebody to get one of those pamphlets in your funeral, they actually have to walk into the front doors of your funeral home, right? So think about Facebook as a way for us to grab that pamphlet, go out into your community, maybe into the town square, and find people who might be actually interested in taking that pamphlet, right? So, hi, madam, you know, have you done any planning for your end of life? Well, here's a few pamphlets. Which one of these might work best for you? So Facebook is a way not to get the people who are already loyal to you and interacting with you and coming into your funeral home. It's to find new people in the community, right? And so oftentimes what I see people doing on Facebook is they go out there and they say, I'm going to put out a Facebook post. And they put so much reliance on it just being something for brand awareness. I'm going to get that like. If I got a like, that means, and I reach somebody, that means I got brand awareness, right? Well, what that's going to end up is you spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars solely relying on somebody to come in and press one button. And almost every single time, those are people who are already going to use your service anyways. So a better way to use Facebook is, one, to use what's called Facebook ads, right? This is paid advertising on Facebook. This is not using Facebook as a means to just get a like. It's going out and showing people a pamphlet and saying, who's interested in this pamphlet? And so I have 3 examples of some ways that you can run these Facebook ads, different topics, right? So one's about how to make cemetery arrangements, or how to plan ahead for your funeral, or maybe to how to participate in a digital funeral, right? These are topics that people might have a curiosity about. And when they see this, now you're talking to that new person in the town square and providing them your pamphlet. Now, one of my favorite parts about this is now, I mean, if you handed that pamphlet to somebody in your community, what are you going to do? You're going to say, hey, I know that you like this pamphlet on, let's say, estate planning. I've got a few others that you might be interested in. Have you thought about X, Y, Z? You can open that conversation. And so by using Facebook as a means to just capture people out in your community and start this relationship and start providing them the info, you think about Facebook as a different way. It's a way to just capture people and then nurture them rather than just say, can you like my post, please? I hope to hear from you when you're in an ad need situation. So Facebook ads are definitely the way that instead of using Facebook as a place to post and just to have somebody hit the mash the like button, it's a way to actually provide that information to more people in the community. Okay, email marketing. This is one that I hear from a lot of funeral homes who just say, "Yep, check the box. I've got my 365 days of grief support, and that's my email marketing." Well, that's a one-tiered approach. You're expecting that your email marketing, that everybody's experiencing the same type of grief, that everybody wants to be contacted every single day for a year, that people can find that email. The way you should really look at email is by opening that conversation. So if Facebook is the way that you give people a pamphlet, email marketing is the way that you carry on that conversation. So you can use email marketing to personalize that conversation. We're not just saying, hey, everybody gets the exact same grief support. We're saying, hey, you showed an interest in this veterans benefits pamphlet I have. Well, let me tell you some more options that veterans have. Did you know that veterans benefits can extend beyond just a burial? Did you know we have cremation options? And here's some ways that we do celebration of lives for veterans. So that is the conversation you can have. And email is the correct place for it because Facebook, it's so quick, right? I mean, you read 3 sentences and you move along. Email is a lot more personal. People actually are open up more when you take that conversation from a public forum like Facebook and move it to a more private forum like email. But with this, you can also use a lot of information like, what are their likes and interests? What is their name? What dates, if they recently experienced a loss, what dates are significant to them? A year after the death of their loved one, birth dates, anything like that. So there's a lot of personalization you can do. And in fact, there was a recent study last year that showed that 90% of US consumers found that this personalized email to be very or somewhat appealing. So it's really effective in providing that personalized outreach to people. There's another study that shows that the ROI of personalizing your communications to people has 122% average ROI. So we want to use email not as just a means of pushing a single message and hoping it sticks with everyone, but actually personalizing and opening up those conversations with people who've expressed an initial interest. So websites, probably the biggest thing, piece of technology that people are using incorrectly. I see over and over websites as a means to, 1, put up an obituary, and 2, sell flowers. Funeral homes are not flower shops, unless you own one, but that's a completely separate business, right? So everyone uses their website as a means to just sell flowers. Nelson put this really beautifully, is that too often people look at websites as they discredit how much traffic they get for essentially free. You look at something like a Walmart.com. They have to do so much work to get somebody to even go to that website. You're getting people to go to your website for free, and the best strategy that most people employ with their website is to get a flower sale, right? What if we can use the website as a means to provide people easy to access information, what they're going there to find that obituary, but what if we can increase engagement by, 1, showing them some of those pamphlets, right? It's like us moving that big pamphlet, turntable or whatever, and putting it right next to them as they walk around saying, hey, there might be something here as you're interested in. So here's an example we can see on this website where you can actually put resources, these, like how to participate in a digital funeral, how to grieve from a distance, pertinent topics to what that community member who's visiting the obituary might be experiencing. And you can now use your website as a means to start to engage people rather than just saying, hey, appreciate the flower sale, goodbye. Another way to do this is how can you incorporate email into this too? If all somebody wants to do is go to your website, leave a tribute on an obituary, what are you doing as a follow-up? Do you just say, great, I'm glad somebody came. I'm glad we got a visitor. Our visitors are up, but that's the only metric you're tracking. Well, we can actually use this as a saying, hey, if somebody's coming to our website and leaving a tribute, what can we do to educate them on other ways to support the family, right? And that's another way you can link that in with some of your email marketing, is saying, hey, we understand that you are trying to provide support to the Smith family. Here's some other ways that you might be able to support them. Here's some grief support too, right? So there's plenty of ways to do personalized email that way, but this just provides a better connection with you and the community member, and really helps them understand the value that you're bringing to that family by providing that visit or other options. Another common mistake I see is people just push people to their homepage of the website, right? smithfuneralhome.com. And everybody goes to smithfuneralhome.com and they get a single message. The new ways you can use your website for that, and the technology that is using what are called landing pages. So these are specific sections of your website that have a distinct message, as we see down here for Alachua County. They have distinct messages depending on why somebody goes there. So if we know that somebody from Alachua County ends up clicking on the website, we don't want to send them to the homepage. Let's send them to this landing page that speaks directly to them and provides a message that we know is most effective to them. This works really well for niche communities like, a Jewish population, or maybe, a certain religious, other religious affiliation. It can also be geographically. If you serve an area and one of them is very high income and another one's low income, well, we can have different messages for that. But that's where you can drive traffic to those different areas of your website. So let's think about how we're using the website to serve people better and provide them a message specific to them, rather than some catch-all message. Another one here is search engine optimization. Search engine optimization. Where do people show up on Google? So when somebody types in something like funeral home in my area, there are so many funeral homes in your area that are competing for that. And people will spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars with these companies to say, get me to the top of Google. What they're overlooking is how that website is actually built. It's kind of like taking a clunky old, a car and just saying, hey, I'm going to put I'm going to go in and I'm going to replace, the universal joint. I'll put in a new transmission, and, we'll put on a hood scoop, and this will help you go farther and better and faster. But the reality is you need a whole new car. And so this is something that a lot of people look at is it's often better to get a website that's built better than it is to spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on trying to fix a broken website. So some of the things that Google looks at is, how mobile friendly you are. So new technology that's been around for a while, but you got to be mobile friendly. You got to have a fast page site. If you are insisting, hey, we need to put up all these videos and new fonts and crazy things on your website, it slows down your website. So there's a balance of making it very unique to you, but also having it be fast. Using the latest Google technology, this is a prime example that very few funeral homes are adopting, but national brands and national insurance companies are adopting. So if you go into your Google browser right now and you type in, how much does a funeral cost? Do you show up? When it shows, hey, here are the costs of funerals and this people also ask section, if that's not your funeral home showing up, your website is not built around the latest Google technology. Okay, and these are big problems because this is how Google is moving their browser or their search engine. So people are asking questions and they want to get answers. And if your website is not providing those answers, you're not going to be reaching those people.
Alex, just to support what you're saying, they're also coming out of Performance Tracker this last year. We run a report called Market Relevance, and it gauges what families report back, why it was that you selected the funeral home you did. And in 2020, websites doubled their percentage over 2019, and they completely leapfrogged all other forms of advertising. So, I'm sure the pandemic had a lot to do with it, but in 2020, there was a huge increase in what families stated as being the reason they selected a funeral home. Now, it's still far beyond, serve my family before and things like that, but it certainly had made a huge jump in this last year.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And A lot of times, so many funeral homes rely on getting people when they go to Google to, hey, if they go to Google, I want to be shown first. Well, you're relying on the people who have no prior relationship with a funeral home. Okay. So those are not the people that, it's way easier to build a relationship with those people before they ever get to Google than to compete on Google to have them see your website first. And oftentimes when they go to Google, you know what those are? Those are price shoppers. They're not looking because they have the best relationship with you. They're looking because they're trying to find the best price and feel comfortable with that price. That's a whole nother discussion on direct cremation and low cost cremation. But for a traditional funeral home, if you build that relationship before they ever get to Google, you don't have to worry about that. It's so much less of a worry for you because you built that relationship. They're going to call you first. Some of the other things to do, and we've seen a lot more adoption of this since the pandemic, but is, providing more options online to people to interact and engage with the funeral. Can they look up your prices? Do you have just a PDF attachment of a GPL, or do you have something interactive that they can choose options and see what it might cost? Are you providing easy checkout options? That's another one. A lot of new technology is these video chats. So request a video chat with a funeral director while you're on the website. Same thing with chat functionality. A lot of people are used to going on now and typing in a question on a chat that pops up on the website. These are important. One, because it provides your families who are not physically coming into your funeral more options, but it's convenient. It's the way your community is used to interacting with technology these days. So it makes it a lot easier for your community to navigate your website and find better options and get their information quicker and easier. Okay, data analysis, right? So this is a really big thing that a lot of funeral homes have data and don't use it. I know Johnson Consulting is probably the top of data analysis and providing information on that. But one of the key parts about your website, Facebook, email, any of the marketing you're doing, as well as some of the things you're doing with your case manager or your surveys, you can take that data and actually create, insightful things with it, right? So one of the examples here, Sue Miner here. So this is an example of somebody who was interacting with a funeral home we work with. And we've gotten all this data based upon the topics that Sue has interacted with and requested information from. So, grief and healing, veterans benefits, cremation, pre-planning. So Sue has been interacting with all these materials. And if we capture that information, what we can do, this is just one person. If we're collecting this information on thousands of people within a community, you start to evaluate trends. What do people like, right? What if we're starting to see an increase in interest in your community of green burial? Well, wouldn't that be nice to be the first funeral home in your area to start talking about that and maybe even offering that service? If you're seeing a huge influx of people requesting information about living wills, maybe you team up with a local living will attorney to actually have a seminar and invite people in either in person in a year or two or virtual, right? So you can take this data and not just say, hey, this is data for data's sake, but actually interpret that data and make business decisions based upon that. And it certainly works in marketing. It certainly works in making pricing decisions and other things that I know Johnson Consulting does. But it can help you a lot more. And so if you're working with a company right now and you're just seeing these data reports that you don't understand, ask them what the analysis is. Ask them what that means for your business and how you can use that data to improve your business. Okay, online contests. This is another thing I see a lot of funeral homes' current technology that they might be doing incorrectly. So online contests are a great way to get engagement in the community and get people to start interacting. But the thing that the online contests miss is why it's important to your community. This is something that you can introduce yourself to new people in the community. People like the game aspect of this, but you can also partner with local partners to actually create a partnership. So maybe you get cookies, you have the bakery down the street provide you cookies and say, in partnership with this bakery, we are doing that. This also allows you to collect more data, right? So we can understand, geographically where people are, and in your community. Are you reaching the right people? How much do people want to interact with the funeral home online? A lot of data you can connect on this, but it really provides a high level interest with people in the community, and they get more comfortable actually, interacting with you online. Plus, it helps you support the community. Video. So video is obviously something that is increasing in adoption by your community and just the entire world. But video should be used not just in terms of putting out a video for video's sake, but you want to do this to actually provide people a better means to ingest information. Some of y'all might know Zach Garbo, our co-founder here at Funeral Innovations, but him and I always have this back and forth discussion about, I like to watch videos to get my information and skip ahead where I need it. He likes to read it. But the thing of the matter is neither of us are wrong or right. The fact of the matter is that there's people who want to get video and get that information better. Let's think about the 60, 70, 80-year-olds in your community that you want to reach with the information. A lot of them have trouble reading. A lot of them might have cataracts or other problems that a video can really help provide that interaction with them that makes it easier for them to ingest. And so you can also do this to show a much more personal side. If a lot of times if you're just putting out a message, you don't get a lot of personality with people. You don't know who those people are. So really video can help create a much more personal aspect of that. And now that you have all your equipment for doing live streaming services, it shouldn't be too much harder to add on, a quick interview or something like that. I see a lot of people do ask the funeral director, where you get people's questions and then you answer them on there. If one person has that question, other people in the community have it. So video can help you get that out there. So don't just put out video for video's sake. Use it as a means to show your personal side and then answer the questions that the community has.
An interesting thing about that, Alex, I have so many clients that between shopper calls or anything like that, they're sometimes nervous about the consistency between arrangers, and it's nothing good or bad, but some people get a little verklempt when they're on the phone or they don't stay on topic. And as you were talking there, I was just thinking from the standpoint of being able to ensure the consistency of your messaging. If you had everybody with the ability to refer to our website, where we've got a video that explains what making arrangements are all about, and it just would make it a cleaner presentation. If there was one that was exactly the same every single time, the likelihood of your success would go up tremendously, I would think.
Yeah, we've actually seen that with great efficacy of putting up videos, explainer videos in different parts of your website. So why did that person get there? Who is that person? And what do they need to know, right? And so, yeah, if it's I've seen people do this with live share, like traditional funeral homes having an online arranger, and they will do like a Zoom meeting with the family and say, hey, here's how you can enter this information on the website. Well, you can also just record a video and a quick explainer video. So the worst thing you can have is somebody to go to your website, get frustrated, and then leave. But if you provide them some options, like either watch that explainer video, or as we call them, escape hatches. So if you frustrated, you click this link and you talk to somebody, hit up a chatbot or notify somebody on staff. But those are ways that you can make sure to lessen frustrations, which are never going to happen. No matter how beautiful and great your website are, there's always going to be somebody who might get frustrated, and you just want to provide them options rather than just say, oh, well.
In fact, some of our more progressive clients, I was very impressed on how they adapted during COVID, but they understood that some people wouldn't understand a funeral where no one showed up. And you might have heard of that Hugs from Home campaign, or in some cases, one of my clients, they had kind of a step-by-step. When you enter the funeral home, this is what it's going to be like. There's a sanitation station here and things like that. So it took a lot of that anxiety away from people not knowing what a COVID funeral would be like. So great ways to using that.
Great. All right, so let's look at some of the emerging technologies. We talked about some of the existing ones and how you can better use those, and what you might, why you might use it, and what the benefits you might be. But there are some new technologies coming up, right? So one of them is YouTube. Now, YouTube has been around for a while, but now we're starting to see a lot more adoption of it. Okay, and I would say that this is an example of where the funeral homes are lagging behind the community on adoption of YouTube. So YouTube, everyone thinks that you go there and you watch a music video or maybe some political rant, or I don't know, there's millions of things that people go there for. But the thing about YouTube is that people go on there and search for very specialized things. So me, for example, I've gotten into planted aquariums and shrimp. So I have these aquariums with plants in them, and I keep shrimp in them, and it's, I don't know, it's a COVID hobby. But it's been really fun for me and relaxing at night. But the only reason I know how to do all that is because I went to YouTube and I found these videos. Another prime example is my mother-in-law. She's really big into arts and crafts and calligraphy, and she watches all this stuff on YouTube. So, it's not just a young population who's going on there and looking up, I don't know, shrimp tanks or, Gangnam style videos. There's also your older community members who are going on there and looking for, things. So you can find a lot of interest that might appeal and actually show them some of the video content you've made, whether it's professional or you did in-house. So YouTube is definitely something that we're seeing better results on in terms of reaching community members and finding some of the topics that your community members might be searching for on YouTube and then advertising that way. So YouTube is definitely something to look out for and keep an eye on and see how you and your community are interacting with it. One of the other things is new platforms, right? So this is the thing I probably hear the most is people saying, well, there's all these new social media platforms. What should I be on? Well, every platform has their purpose and their place, okay? Some of them are different age groups. Some of them are different political affiliations. And probably the worst part about this is that a lot of them change over time. I think we all remember how Snapchat started out and the negative press it got with, young people having illicit photos on there that disappeared. Well, it's far from that now, but let's say it actually flopped. It started out as just an innocuous platform and then moved to that. If you're already on that and you're trying to advertise or you even have a profile on it, you're now going to be associated with that later. And that's the same thing with the politically oriented social media platforms. You need to think about that, of what that represents your brand in the community and if you want to be involved with that. I know 90% of the funeral homes I work with say, hey, we don't want to even touch any politics whatsoever. So you need to think about that as well. Things like TikTok, that's another one that's very young population. That is it something worthwhile in the future? Maybe not right now, because we're not trying to target people in their 20s and maybe in their 30s, but even it hasn't been that big of an adoption there yet. Instagram, now this is definitely something, the data still doesn't show that Facebook is, doing worse than Instagram in terms of getting responses, but Instagram is on the rise. Facebook is still the king of the platform. So something to consider. Watch these platforms, know the age, know the political affiliation, and see how they morph to make sure that you want to be on it, and you know what happens there. Virtual reality, this is something on the up and up. We have a really great video on our Funeral Innovations YouTube channel that you can actually see an example of how we built a virtual reality celebration of life. Now, this is something that, are we going to roll this out to every funeral home right now? No, but virtual reality is being adopted a lot more by the country. But think about this as providing your community members who can't make it there to be virtually in presence of the celebration of life, right? And this has been happening with COVID, where people go onto an online game and everybody goes and experiences a memorial there in a virtual reality setting. Or think about it in the future, right? Where, let's say in this example, and what you'll see is Harold had passed away and they had a celebration of life in a virtual setting where they went to Harold's favorite camping site. And so they actually had the celebration, not 2 hours up in the mountains, but actually in a virtual reality setting where you could experience what Harold loved in this world and create a celebration of life. So there's a lot of possibilities of what you can do with virtual reality in the future, and that's a budding one. But we'll see where that goes. Old school cool. So going back to the OG stuff, as I call it. So, you know, handwritten notes, providing more information, or I'm sorry, of other like trinkets or, you know, actual physical things that people aren't used to. And actually there's companies now who will have robots that can write out handwritten notes and create, you know, errors like in your handwriting and stuff. And so you can actually do this very efficiently now, is like sending out these handwritten notes. I'm going to hop forward a little bit quick so we have some time for questions at the end, but local support, another big thing you need to rethink is how can you do more online things with your local community groups, right? Partnering with local restaurants to provide a gift card, or profiling local hospice caregivers or nurses who are battling, you know, on the front lines of the pandemic, charities. Think about what you can do to provide better support for those groups that you have a relationship with in the community. This helps your community see that you are involved, you know the community, and you are supporting them as well. So this is really something that's been very effective, of relying more on your promotion of other local groups rather than just your own funeral home.
This is a favorite one of mine. I always tell people, why reinvent the wheel when you can jump on somebody else's bandwagon? And, you know, funeral homes, other than going there for obituaries, don't have a big following. But when you link up to local groups that already have an impassioned group of followers, and then you demonstrate that you have an interest in them too, just a really great way to multiply your following and people that recognize your place in the world by linking yourself to other organizations locally like that.
Yeah, absolutely. That really does a quid pro quo too, right? So you go, and if you approach these people with ideas, they will come back to you when they're doing something, or they'll be like, hey, you know, we are, you know, let's say somebody had a favorite restaurant and you've done a partnership with them, and then they had a, you know, a regular that comes in and passed away. They might talk to that family and send them your way, something as simple as that. Or if they're doing a promotion, they might invite you to do it as well. So automation, I know that this word is a big, you know, bad, ugly word for a lot of people in the funeral home profession, because when they hear automation, they think a lack of personalization. They think of a one size fits all messaging. But one of the great parts about technology now is that it's evolved so much that we can still have that personal touch and automate that and make it easier on you and your staff to bring in automation, but still have that personal outreach and feel. And in fact, I'm going to show you a real great example of this. So lifetime marketing. So we're going to talk a little bit about what is this. A lot of these principles that we've seen here, these new technologies, have been built into what we call lifetime marketing. This is the way to provide somebody in your community a personalized outreach through whatever stage they are in their life. So let's look at an example of this. So down here, we'll call her Dolores. So Dolores over here on the far left, she had her first interaction with a funeral home. That might have been on social media, could have been in the, you know, on a website, wherever. But in this first one, the type of message that we might relay to Dolores here is going to be more educational, right? So we're going to provide Dolores information that, you know, on the cremation process or other things that she might be interested in. We can provide that through a variety of means, but this message is going to be completely different than when there's a death in the family. So let's say Dolores's husband dies, and now Dolores needs a different type of message. Maybe it's not so educational. Now it's more about, what do you need to start getting ready for your services? So now she's going to need a completely different type of message, and maybe whatever format she wants, whether that's email or, you know, a text, whatever it is. And then after the service, we need a completely different type of outreach, right? That can be aftercare related. So, providing here's what you do with, collecting Social Security, or who needs death certificates, or how to close out online accounts. So that service area or the aftercare area is going to have a completely different message that appeals and provides her that valuable information personalized to her situation then. And then maybe after that, she attends an event, maybe a pre-planning event where your sales team is following up and providing a different message. And then let's say she does say, hey, I'm going to, have my pre-need with you. Well, after that pre-need, we can have another type of message, reinforcing that decision, asking for any referrals, seeing if there's other things she might be interested in. But that all happens after the pre-need sale. And then ultimately, when that person passes away, we have multiple other people that we can have that new first interaction, right? So this is the thing about the lifetime marketing is these conversations that you can have through a digital medium like Facebook, website, email, anywhere are the exact same conversations that you were having previously, but now we're providing them in on a digital format. So you don't need to think about this as some crazy technology that you don't really understand. Think about it as just a different way to get that information out. And especially now, since you have so fewer people actually walking into your front doors because of this pandemic, it's more important than ever to use some of these technologies to actually provide a message to the right people at the right time in their life, and continue to stay in front of them and continue to provide that information and education wherever they might be. So for those of you who aren't familiar with this concept, this is actually what we help funeral homes do. So we actually help funeral homes create that personalized marketing in a personalized yet automated way to actually find people in the community with the pamphlets, go out into the community, hand out those pamphlets, start that conversation, provide it in a personalized manner, understanding who they are, nurture that conversation, and then ultimately, keep top of mind or help you with a pre-planning or event attendance or whatever it is that a funeral home might want to do once you've had those conversations. But the whole idea is this: you want to keep people as long as you can in this life cycle or lifetime marketing to make sure that you're building a relationship, not letting them go to Google, but really educating them on the value of your services. So I know a lot of people, when they hear this, they say, well, where am I at? So as Nelson mentioned at the beginning of this call, is we actually do a free market analysis where we'll go look at what you're doing online, some of the shortfalls you might have in your current technology, as well as some of your competitors, what they're doing and where they're excelling compared to you. We actually provide that in a 1-hour meeting. And if you're interested in seeing where you stack up versus where your competitors are and where you have areas of improvement, feel free to email me at alex@funeralinnovations.com, and I'd be happy to set up a time. Or if you want to see more about what we do, you can just email me there, and I'd be happy to talk through it there as well.
And I can say personally, after sitting in on dozens of these with clients, it's just amazing information. I think we all want to know a little bit more about our competitors, and it's very telling to see who's responding, how quickly they're responding, if they're potentially responding faster than you are. It's just, it's free and it's worth a lot. I would encourage everybody and anybody to reach out to you, Alex, and get that done. You just can't go wrong with that.
I appreciate that, Nelson. So,
Alex, I know we were talking at another time, and I think this, in a way, kind of sums up a lot of what you're talking about, is that we've never really looked at the website with the same kind of, priority that we do our own front door. Or, we talk about curb appeal on a funeral home, and that I've told people all the time that your landscaper and maintenance guy probably has more to do with people coming to your funeral home than other people, because they drive by a beautiful facility and they say, that's the place I'm going to take my mom someday. But given the world that we're in today, and not everybody is driving in, or visiting a funeral home, a lot of it does rely on this interaction, the way that they understand what you stand for. We're a relationship profession. We plan on standing at a visitation and shaking hands and getting to meet people and letting them know we're good folks in a time of need. How do you convey that, or how do you profile that for somebody when you don't have the ability to shake their hand, talk to them personally?
Yeah, I would say that's probably a struggle for a lot of funeral homes, and something I see. I would say there's two ways to do that. So one is, I mean, quite frankly, when you have some visual aspect, like your funeral home is just gorgeous, and when people walk in, they want to have their service there, or maybe it's your cemetery grounds or whatever it is. Those visual aspects of it, you want to promote those and build those into your website, your Facebook, your email marketing, things like that. But the big thing is, you don't want to talk about yourself in that. So when I say that, you don't want to say, look how awesome this place is, right? You could be a little bit more like, hey, look at the fresh bushes that were trimmed, and you have a great picture of your grounds, right? Or a lot of times with that local support, a great thing to do is, if you have the bakery come and drop off the cookies, you can take photos and be like, hey, we're very happy to support this, the bakery in this giveaway. And you're showing pictures of your area there, right? So I would say there's ways to kind of loop in images and visuals. But I would also say with that messaging, you want to, if you're talking about your staff or what you do, don't talk about what you did, talk about how it benefited the community or the community member. So an example of that might be a very unique celebration of life. You don't want, if you got permission from the family because it was so unique, you don't want to go out there and say, hey, look at this great thing we did. Look at this great celebration of life. We say, hey, we were honored to do a celebration for John Smith, who is a Georgia Bulldogs fan like I am, and here's what we did to help him show his life. So you're talking more about that person and how you did that, rather than saying, look at what we did. So it's a different type of messaging and focusing more out instead of on yourself. The other way I would say that, Nelson, is by I hear from a lot of funeral homes that they say the number one thing I have that differentiates me is quality of service. What do they mean by that? Is once you've walked in the door and you have a death in the family, you get that quality of service. But the problem is that you can provide that quality of service way before then. So why are we waiting for that family to walk in the door? And this is one of the great parts about something like, using these technologies, is you can show that you care about your community, you're providing quality of service through the materials and the interaction that you're providing through something like marketing.
I was just thinking about a client and conveying what you stand for, what you represent, and showing off yourself, but not, being too blatant about it. One thing I can remember is they all got red shirts, and they had a picture of everybody, and it was about dressing in red for breast cancer awareness. And, they are bringing something to the fore that's near and dear to a lot of people's hearts. And it wasn't just lip service, they're all dressed that way in unison and things like that. So,
yeah.
Well, Alex, the one thing in funeral service, you start on time and you end on time. And I see we're just coming up at the top of the hour here. Again, I want to thank you so very much. Like I said, a beginning of a series of these webinars in which we'll highlight our strategic partners. It goes without question in listening to Alex that there's an expertise there that we just can't begin to cover. And I think you'll see that with the rest of our strategic partners over the course of the next few weeks. Alex, personally, I'm glad you didn't invest into Bitcoin or GameStop, because your loss made us richer for you being here with us today. So Thank you
Well,
very
I
much.
appreciate it. That's not to say I didn't. I just didn't put enough into becoming.
Amen to that. Thank you, everyone. If you do have questions, we're at the end of the broadcast here, but you can always send in questions, and we'll certainly pass those along to Alex. One more time, would highly encourage you to use the free service of having them evaluate your website, and especially to see how you stack up against your competitors. It's a great, great service that they provide, and it's free. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care.